Hi, my name is Chris Brennan, and I'm at the United Astrology Conference in Chicago doing interviews with different astrologers from around the world this week. And I just ran into in the hallway Alois Treindl of Astrodienst or Astro.com, and you're actually the founder of Astrodienst, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I started Astrodienst in January 1980.
You founded it in January of 1980?
Yes.
Okay, and it's become basically the biggest, or it's the primary resource source I know for chart calculations around the world, or at least all new students of astrology that I know. Your website is the main one that they go to for free chart calculations. It probably is the largest at this point, right?
I think so. I don't see anything comparable nowadays. So many things also have disappeared
Sure.
or merged and disappeared or things, but and we are still there and expanding. Yes.
Sure. So you started the company in January of 1980?
Yes, I had started studying astrology in the summer of 1979, when just around my first Saturn return, very accidental that I managed to see an astrology book in the window of a used bookstore.
Okay.
And I went in and bought it. I did not know anyone who did astrology. I did not know the 12 signs of the zodiac. I knew nothing.
Wow.
And over a weekend, I studied this book, which was Ursula Louis, a German translation of Ursula Louis, How to Do Your Own Horoscope or something.
Okay. Grant Louis.
No, Ursula Louis.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, and over this weekend, I learned everything you could learn in this book. There was a little ephemeris in it. I called my mother, asked her for my time of birth.
Wow.
She gave it to me an hour wrong and gave me an Aries rising, which I felt was not
correct.
fitting.
Okay.
And so I wrote to the birth registry and got my real birth time, which was an hour later, and I got Taurus rising,
Okay.
which was more fitting in my... Anyway, within a few weeks, I'm a computer freak.
Okay.
I was a computer enthusiast or hacker since 1970 when I went to university.
Okay.
I had always done programming. All problems I encountered in my studies, I studied physics, I immediately wrote software to solve them or to make them automatic instead of doing things by hand. Nowadays this is normal. In the early 70s this was not yet normal.
Sure, that's kind of like, it's like Bill Gates having access to a computer at college earlier than anyone else.
Kind of thing, yes.
Yeah.
So I start immediately. It asked for being programmed, of course, instead of looking up an ephemeris and taking a chart form and filling it out. It asked for being programmed, and within 6 weeks, I think, of my first encounter with astrology, I had a program which could do chart drawings. I went to the university library in Zurich. I had to learn how the planets moved. I was not into astronomy before. I acquired the necessary knowledge in basically from the original roots, which means I realized that it's complicated to compute an ephemeris. So
Sure.
the important author was Simon Newcomb in the early 1900s, an American astronomer who had done the precise calculations for the inner planets, and this was still the standard for the astronomical almanac in the 1980s. And within a few weeks I had my first astrology program, and I had this girlfriend at the time who was a psychotherapist, a Gestalt therapist, and she started together with me to study astrology.
Okay.
What we did, she took the birth time of all her clients, which were about 60, and I computed the charts, and then I took a vacation from my university job, an unpaid vacation. We went to the island of Samos in Greece in September '79, and we read the books by Thomas Ring, which is the most important German astrologer of the 20th century, in my opinion. And this was really hard work, and we worked with these 60 charts of my girlfriend's patients and the Thomas Ring's work, and started to understand the charts. This is how I got into astrology.
Wow.
And the charts were already done with my first computer program. So, and then later in the autumn, I looked for astrology courses, and anyway, I bought a lot of books. I went to seminars, and then people there, they saw the charts I had been doing. They were done in colors with a pen plotter was the machine which could do color drawings with it grabbed these pens and would draw the form and so on. And so they asked me, oh, can I have one of these charts also, which you have here?
Wow.
And then I printed the first flyer in January 1980 and offered this Astrodienst. Astrodienst means Astro service in German. Dienst is service. So I created this name Astrodienst Zurich and printed the first flyer, and that started the company. I still was doing my PhD, and I did this work on my lab computer in my lab at the university.
But then afterwards you left and set up the company after you graduated?
I graduated, I finished my PhD in 81. A year later it was kind of tricky to do this small business on the side, on the university equipment. The first money I earned, I saved and bought my own plotter drawing machine, because this was the device which kind of was most central. And then when I knew I would finish my PhD, I invested in a computer. I always had relatively expensive computers which were state of the art, not, I mean, 1981 the IBM PC had just come out, and I actually bought an Apple II, but I realized I cannot work on this shitty machine because it had only 9-digit precision in the calculation, which was not good enough to calculate the moon's orbit. And I sold it again, and my girlfriend, who had a bit more money than me, she lent me 10,000 Swiss francs to buy how do you call it, a workstation, which was with one of the first 68,000 processors, a 32-bit system. And so I started then with my own company. I did not know whether I would be able to live off it.
What was so the company, was it mainly printing up charts?
We do just chart drawings and calculations. What I did at that time, I mean, this was before the arrival of astrology software in the hands of astrologers, because people did not, in 81, people did not have computers.
So this is before SolarFire, or before any personal programs, before the internet.
Absolutely, the internet is only mid-90s. So anyway, what I did actually, I contacted all the astrology schools in the German-speaking market and offered them to do chart designs and chart calculations according to their specific rules. Each astrologist, as you know, they are very individualistic. Each one does it differently. And so this was the specialty I did. I offered them, you can have charts with your name on it for your school, for your practice, and this brought me a certain success.
So very quickly you realized there's a great diversity in the astrological community, and by creating something that could work for different schools, it had a greater marketing potential.
Yes, I mean, I'm not really a good marketer in the sense. I'm a guy who likes to program and to be in the background and to provide a service. But I met important people in Swiss and German astrology. I remember Reinhold Ebertin, for example, who was quite old at that time.
Wow. But he was still alive in the 1980s.
Yes, he was, and he was very enthusiastic about it. So I developed all kinds of charts for him. His what he calls the life diagram, where he does progressions over over 30 years in a certain graphical format, graphical ephemeris. Then he had his 90-degree circles, but no aspects in the chart. And so I was challenged with a lot of varieties, and I learned all kinds of astrological techniques. And so Astrodienst could exist in these years. These are the years between 1980 and 87 as a chart service.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then eventually you met Liz Green and you became interested in
Well,
her approach, but you also transitioned to doing
I need to
chart delineations.
go again a bit in the background if we have the time.
Sure.
After I had solved the problem of astrological computation, which is nothing original in that sense, you just have to learn how the different techniques are, but these are mathematical and computational problems.
So the primary things are like first build an ephemeris and planetary movements,
yes, and you have to solve a lot of problems which are not quite trivial, like the collision problem of when you want to draw a chart, but there's many things in the same house, and how do you solve it that they do not sit on top of each other, but are in a pleasing way displaced. This is not really trivial, and you still see software which solves this in ugly ways, and some in more elegant. But what I want to say, the interesting thing in astrology, of course, the reading of charts and not the calculation of charts. The astrological interpretation is the complex problem. Compared to that, astrological calculation, if you can make it very difficult, also you do that in your work. Some of your rules are so tricky and difficult that it's quite some work to program that, but basically that's mechanical. Whereas astrological reading is something creative. A good astrologer, he or she recognizes patterns in a chart, recognizes themes and subjects, and so on. And this was, now the early 1980s was a period where artificial intelligence and expert systems were a fashion in computer science. Earlier in the late 50s, there had been a very early period of artificial intelligence, which did not get very far. The early 80s were it was really fashionable, new. That there was a lot of research going on, and man talked a lot about artificial intelligence and expert systems, modeling knowledge in rule-based system, but diffuse knowledge, not knowledge which can be strictly calculated, but fuzzy logic. Many things were. It was really a field which was developing then, and I told myself I want to use this for astrological interpretation. So what I did in this, between 82 and 85, I learned everything one could learn about expert system technology and artificial intelligence, what one could learn in Zurich at the both universities. And then in 85, I felt I was ready to build a system, but I realized I do not know enough astrology. To build an expert system, you need an expert. And because I had put all my energy into learning about artificial intelligence and the expert system, I had actually neglected astrology. Originally, I had started with a deep interest in astrology, but over all the computing, I had kind of neglected the astrology itself.
In terms of knowing how to interpret and read a
chart?
Exactly,
yes. I had learned a lot about astrological techniques, but not about the process, how to read a chart. So I knew I have to go out and look for somebody for more astrological knowledge. And this is when I met Liz Green and a workshop she did, for a 1-week workshop in the Swiss mountains. And I talked to her about what I wanted to do, and this brought us together, and over a couple of months of knowing each other, she agreed to work with me to try to model her approach to read a chart into this expert system I was willing to build. And this was, then we worked for 2 years on this project, and the result was in 87 what we call the psychological horoscope analysis. This has been the basis then of success of Astrodienst. It had the consequence that within 2 months of the release of this program, of this horoscope analysis, I had 1 employee before, and suddenly I had to hire 5 people.
Wow.
To be able to fulfill all the orders.
So it was that successful right from the start?
Yes, we, as a chart service, we had collected we had 14,000 customers at this time in our address database from the years of chart service, and we mailed out the information about this new interpretation. The response was so strong that we were just exploding in a way. This was still before the internet, it was all mail order.
Right.
And mostly in German, but because Liz, of course, is an American-British writer, we developed in English and it was translated into German. We brought it out in both languages, and the contact with her brought us into the English-speaking world immediately.
Okay, so you were doing mail order interpretations and delineations of the charts that you were sending out to the customers?
Well, we created this, we printed these reports, the psychological horoscope, which was kind of a 25-page report, and which was very different from everything which had existed before in terms of computerized astrology.
Right.
It does not talk about astrology at all. It does not talk about planets or houses, because basically Liz Green combines Jungian psychology and astrology, and there is in the internal logic there is a mapping. We first map the astrological elements into concepts of Jungian psychology, and Liz, the text she wrote, talks about the psychological concepts and not about the underlying astrological patterns, which makes her recognize a theme in a chart. So this was quite different. Also technologically, it was very different.
Sure, so it's not weighted down with technical jargon and things like that.
Yes.
Right.
And so from there on, we grew. At that time, actually, we built a system of licenses that we licensed a part of our software to companies in other countries. We did not send charts directly to America, but we had licenses in the US who had software from Astrodienst to enter data, and then each of our license partners had a modem connection to our computer in Zurich, because the intelligent part of the software resided only in Zurich. So, and then we delivered codes back, how to compose a report.
Wow.
And this was between 87 and 95. We built up about 40 licenses in 25 countries. Wow. This is also why we had so many translations into other languages, because like Italian people had seen this maybe in a shop in London, and then they came to us and said, we want to do this in Italy, and others came from Jordan or from Malaysia and from all kinds of countries in the world. We could not work with all countries because we would not do translations into Arabic or into Chinese at that time.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We built up this licensing system, and this gave us a lot of variety in languages. And then came the internet.
Right, so the internet explodes onto the scene in the mid-1990s, and you were one of the early companies that launched a website.
In 1996 we launched a website. I must say, I have a playful side. I like to program. And we were sitting on this treasure of astrological computational software. We did all kinds of charts and techniques, but by this time, astrologers had computers. They would not order charts at a chart service anymore. Okay. So we were sitting on this old treasure of our computational software, which we still sold charts, but it was basically a dying business to sell charts. So the internet we put.
Did you make a deliberate decision that you didn't want to sell the software, that you just wanted to calculate the charts, or why didn't you get into the software business before the internet came along?
Others did that.
Okay.
I was not in. First of all, you had to work with computers which people could afford to buy.
Oh, right.
But I was used to work with computers at the higher level, at more capacity, more power,
Sure.
Which which a university could afford, or we could afford as a company to have one of these. I saw my colleagues who were into doing software for astrologists.
Right.
They had to it was very hard at that time, to squeeze into an IBM PC or into whatever,
Right.
Atari or whatever was around, a meaningful software. You were fighting against the machine much more than dealing with the solution of the problem. I did
Sure.
not like this. And then they were had to deal with customers.
Customer support
the
for
clumsy
technical,
customers who make all kind of nonsense with
Right.
your software, and you have to be good in customer support, very tolerant of all that, and
Right.
you have to. This was not my interest actually. You have little time as an astrologer software to do anything. You basically you work in distribution, in updates, in problem fixing. This was not what I wanted. I like this background service. We have only one copy of a program. When there is a bug, we fix it, and
Right.
it's fixed.
That makes sense. So you saw an opportunity then when the internet came along, because you were already doing something like that in licensing it, but now you could do the calculations on your own website, and then anyone
Now
could
we had
access it.
this old calculation program with all these nice diagrams and graphics, and we thought we give this away. We build an online chart service and put all this, because it does not do much business anymore. This large variety of calculations and different types of charts, it was not really, because we were living off the horoscope interpretations, but the chart service was basically only a small section, and with the internet, it was a nice idea to put the chart service for free in the internet, because we had the software. Certainly we had to work to build the web interface and so on, and we did not know how much work that would be over the years, but
Sure.
this was started in '96. We had an online chart service, and within 1 year we basically put all the kind of chart variants we had for free in the internet.
Okay.
The idea is also that this gives a platform where people are very happy to use it. It draws everyone who is interested in astrology and does not want to buy software
Sure.
to that, and we got a huge user base, and very few of these users also would buy a report from us.
Okay.
I often have compared this as we give out free beer, but we are actually a wine seller.
Okay.
So thousands of people come to drink the free beer, and a few of them also buy a bottle of wine
That's
or
a great.
champagne.
I like that. That's a good
And
analogy.
we live off this.
Sure.
And basically, this is the story. This is how we exist until this day.
Sure. Well, it's been amazing. It's totally transformed the astrological community, because now your website is the website that all new astrologers go to get their birth chart calculated first. And it's just amazing that something like that can exist compared to when you started, when you would have had to write to an astrologer and have them calculate it for you, or learn chart calculation yourself.
Yes, I still do it. I'm
Sure.
still, sometimes when somebody comes and says you do something wrong, I'm able to calculate the chart precise to the second of arc by hand.
Okay.
And I still do it from time to time, because if I'm challenged or our software is challenged, I sit down and do it by hand and make sure there is no bug. There can always be bugs in software.
Sure.
But also what I want to say about this, all the free services we give, or also with Astro Data Bank we bought something which was a commercial project. we spend actually a lot of money for it, but we give it away for free. This is about energy flow. I feel personally that the fact that so many people use our services, even if they never buy anything, this gives us a tremendous stream of energy which comes to us and which motivates us in our work. I personally, when I have had years of personal crisis and I was basically nearly unable to work on anything commercial. As soon as I tried to do something which was oriented in earning money, my energy wouldn't be there. But in these years, when I turned my energy to things which do not bring anything, like working on Swiss ephemeris or working on improving the free service on our website, then I felt energy, and this because there's something coming back which is not money, which is just this, the fact that you give something to people and they somehow they love it and they are grateful for it. This brings a lot back to the original, and I think all our staff at Astrodienst feels the same. It's very important for us. We need to earn money to be able to do what we do, and we are doing well on that level. But it's very important for all of us to feel that we contribute something which is just there because we can do it.
Sure.
And not have to look every second that you earn enough or that you sell enough, and not turn everything into a profit immediately, or also not in the long term, that we can afford to. I mean, I have been a very lucky man in my career, you know, something which was a hobby and I started out of fascination has turned into something which has been successful, and astrology has given me a lot also on the material level, and I feel also obliged and motivated to give back, to invest a lot of what I can do just for others to enjoy or participate. And this has been, particularly in times of crisis, has been very important to keep me going.
Sure. Yeah, well, I mean, I know it's impacted a lot of people's lives. Like me, that was how I started astrology and cast my first chart was on your website in the year 2000. So I wouldn't have become a professional astrologer if it didn't exist. So in that way, you're changing people's lives, you know, all the time in a very substantial and noticeable way. So thank you on behalf of a lot of the younger astrologers.
Yes, but they also give something to us just because we feel that we do something important, and that would not be without an audience, you know.
Sure. Do you ever, sometimes some of the older astrologers who had to calculate charts first, they worry about younger generations who don't know how to calculate a chart by hand. Do you think that's an issue, or is that not necessarily a problem?
I don't see it as a problem. I mean, I like if somebody has made the effort to understand what is behind, but I mean, as we know, a long time people have been driving cars without being able to understand how they work, and
Sure.
And we use, I mean, very sophisticated devices, our iPhones or whatsoever, and we don't understand it. I like personally that I'm still able to understand the technology behind things, but this is not necessary. One can only do that much, and I think it's more important to be creative on whatever level. Not everybody has to be down in the inside of the machine.
Sure. So it's the interpretation that matters maybe the most, or being able to interpret well doesn't mean that you necessarily need to calculate.
That's what I find, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So and in terms of giving away free things, in addition to the chart calculations, you mentioned Astro Data Bank. That was such a huge project that you took on in 2008 to buy that commercial software that had birth times for hundreds of thousands of people, and then to release it for free. That was such a huge undertaking. It's been 10 years now since you released it, right?
Yes.
Do you feel like that was a good move ultimately, and are you happy with where it stands 10 years later, or would you have done anything differently with that?
No, I'm happy with where it stands. I have also been, or we have been able to form a small community of about 10 people maybe who work as editors, as volunteers, most of them as volunteers for Astrology and enter new data, make corrections, and so it's growing all the time. Uh, an important element is missing in Astrodienst, which was present in the original Astrodienst PC software, which is the research features, the possibility to define patterns and search the database for that.
Right.
And I'm still looking for a programmer who would help us to build that into the web interface, basically first to reproduce what was already there in the PC software, which does not really work anymore. It kind of still works, but anyway, I'm still looking for someone to help me to build that onto the PC software. It's not quite trivial because we chose the wiki format for Astrodienst, which is a known Wikipedia, everybody knows it, and we use the same software which is called MediaWiki, coming out from Wikipedia for Astrodienst, and this is non-interactive. Wikipedia is something you read, you don't interact with it.
Right.
It's very hard to build something onto a wiki site which is interactive and to have research features. And it's a lack of time actually that I cannot do it personally because I have too many other things to do. I have often been more helpful in my expectations, but I'm not that young and not that productive anymore.
Sure.
But still, so this is something which is lacking in Astrodienst, and I really hope that the right person comes along to help us build this onto Astrodienst.
Sure. Yeah, that would be a great feature. Well, hopefully somebody watching maybe will contact you about that if they have the requisite skills to do that sort of programming.
Our expectations are high. This is one of the problems. We are very demanding in terms of know-how, but at the same time, this is not something somebody has to contribute for free. It would be as a paid developer,
Sure.
but he has to bring certain skills and interest to be able to do that.
Sure. Well, it's good to know that it seems like you're always trying to add things to the website and expand things or add additional techniques, so it's always growing and developing in some way.
We do what we can. Actually, even running a website without adding new things is such hard work because the expectations of the user change so much.
Right.
We have had, for example, the crossover from the desktop computer to the mobile device.
Oh, right.
Now we have reached the point about a year ago where more users use Astro.com on mobile than on desktop.
Okay, so
And
it has shifted
this,
like that.
you have to do a lot of hard work in the background to keep it working well on all kinds of devices.
Right.
And particularly for a small company like us, where basically there's 3 developers only, it is very hard to maintain all this, just to keep it going and to keep it up to date with the expectations of the user.
Sure.
The last months we worked only on the new EU regulations
Oh, yeah.
about data
Right.
protection, and that we have to warn everyone that we actually process personal data, etc., and fulfill legal requirements. No, that's more than a month, which is complete nonsense in a way, these regulations, but we are forced to comply.
Sure.
And this gives a lot of work, which does not bring you anything,
Right.
except that you have to fulfill the legal requirement. And maintaining all these things is, we sit on software which is more than, actually up to 38 years old, and interwoven in complex ways, and just to keep it running also is a lot of work, which is not visible to the outside,
Right.
but which takes up a lot of energy.
So there's pieces of the software that are still from the original versions, Or
There are some, yes.
okay. And you're still always adding new things to it sometimes, like new planets, or 10 years ago I met you at UAC in 2008, and you said afterwards that you would integrate whole sign houses, and then you added it as a new feature. So you're still adding new features.
That is relatively simple.
Sure, yeah, that's an easy thing to do.
But what's called this kind of release system?
Zodiac releasing, yeah.
Yes, this is, for example, I kind of promised to do that, and we did a case study internally how we would do it some years ago when we met last time, but we have not done it yet, just out of lack of time, really. You know?
Yeah.
But basically, in what we add, we mostly add what we personally like. Either one of us in the team, he's interested in some astrological technique, so we add it. We are not so much directed by outside demand, but by our own interest.
Sure, that makes sense.
It's also this bit of playfulness about it. This is not a field where we will earn any money if we add such a feature. It's just a pleasure to be able to have it and to give it out, so people play with it. Or, the ephemeris, or we recently programmed tables of houses because we realized, I mean, nobody needs tables of houses anymore nowadays, but we realized they are not in print anymore, or there have never been actually tables of houses for obscure house systems, because economically they never would have made sense. You know? So we worked a few weeks on creating tables of houses, which I don't know whether anyone uses them, but now other people in the southern hemisphere, they never had tables of houses. For them they had to do a complicated way of turning the chart around to use northern house tables, and then turning it around again, and to get the house for southern latitudes. It's so easy once you have written the software to do tables of houses for everywhere. So this is something we did, which we spent a couple of weeks also with. That's completely non-profit. It's just nice to have.
And is it the same with the ephemeris? Because your ephemeris has become the standard, the Swiss ephemeris is the standard ephemeris for most software programs at this point, right?
Yes. That was very early, that at Astrodienst we had a precise ephemeris, and I was confronted, that was still in the time of the calculation service. Each astrological developer had his own planetary routine somehow, and then people would come to us and say, but I use this software, and like the Pluto is 2 minutes different from yours, and which is and I was fed up.
Yeah.
To answer such, because it's an objective thing. I mean, the planets are there and not there, and so we very early I licensed the calculation routines of Astrodienst to other software developers. So this discussion would end. What is the correct position of a planet? And we would not be confronted with this kind of question anymore. And in Swiss ephemeris, but this was done for a license fee. The programmer had to pay, I think, $200 or so for having a license for the calc module. Later with Swiss ephemeris, it's available under a free license for those who also publish their software under free license, and otherwise it's for a small fee available for programmers who do not want to share their own code with others.
Sure. And was that born out of the same desire to make things available for free, or was it more just annoyance?
Well, yes, because we are the only ones who can do it.
Sure.
Basically, and it's not. I mean, inside Swiss ephemeris is the NASA ephemeris. It's not. We do not do the hard work, but it's the Jet Propulsion Laboratory ephemeris which we use as a core ephemeris. We wouldn't be able to compute to this level of precision. We use the JPL ephemeris, but we packaged it in a way that an astrological programmer can use it, and we added a lot of features which astrologists need, including hypothetical objects and houses, astrological houses, of course, and then all kinds of asteroids, and I mean it's a tremendous work. Every month, you know, another 5,000 or 2,000 asteroids are added.
Right.
But we are. It's a routine thing now. I do when I have nothing else to do
You add a few hundred more asteroids?
Yes, the Astronomical Union publishes new asteroid orbits basically every month. Sometimes they skip a month, or when the programmer who is responsible is ill, sometimes a few months go by.
Okay.
All these people are getting quite old, also including us. The ones who do this JPLFMS, they are also old guys now.
Sure.
And you can notice that for a half a year, for example, nothing happened anymore because the guy who had to do the asteroids was ill or something.
Okay.
They are not so open about the real reasons, but then you kind of push what's happening, why don't you publish them? And suddenly they catch up.
Sure. That's funny. So I think I've run out of questions, but so you're here at the United Astrology Conference this week, and are there any lectures or any things you're looking forward to, or are you mainly just here in order to meet people and sort of catch up with friends?
The socializing is an important component. I'm into astrology so long, so I know many people since a long time, and it's nice to meet them. But actually this time I will visit a lot of lectures, because there is fields in astrology which I have completely neglected.
Sure.
Like orderly astrology and electional astrology, something I kind of considered as old-fashioned superstitious thing,
Sure.
and ignored for most of my time, and I have become more curious about these parts of astrology where they can really give you something, and the techniques used by these guys. So, because I come from the psychological
Sure.
astrology, which kind of has not done this, all the traditional elements, you know. I mean, I even did not understand them, you know, and somebody would talk to me 10 years ago about via combusta, I would have no
Sure.
idea what he was talking about.
Right. It seems like a lot of astrologers, even Liz Green, I was reading her recent book, and it seems like she's gone back and studied the history a lot and maybe started using some older techniques as well.
I wouldn't say that.
Not so much?
I mean, she has internally used that more things than she has published. Many astrologers have done that. They pick out a certain segment which is their specialty. For Liz Green, it was Jungian psychology and astrology.
Sure.
But they were also brought up in traditional techniques to more extent. I was not so lucky, you know. I learned astrology from basically modern psychological astrologers, Thomas Ring and Liz Green mostly, and Robert Hein, okay, but I'm willing to also go back and look at other things,
Sure.
which I would not consider serious before. But
Sure.
with age, one gets more tolerant, I find.
Sure. Yeah. And you're also up for a Regulus Award. I think you've been nominated for an award, haven't you?
No.
No? Okay.
No.
I was trying to campaign to push to... You did at the last conference I saw you. You won a Lifetime Achievement Award at the ESAR conference,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you feel like your contributions to the astrological community have been recognized more in recent years, or it's not something that concerns
I'm
you?
a very modest person, personally. I don't need a stage light. I'm very happy. I think I'm very much respected by those who know what I do, and that is absolutely enough for me. You know, it's nice to have this public recognition, but I personally don't need it.
Sure. You're just content to do the work because it's something that you love?
Yeah, my life is not only astrology, you know. I have a very rich life. I'm interested in culture. I read a lot. I never read a astrology book. I only read novels and newspapers.
Sure.
I do a lot of sport. I have a social life. I cook. I had a period in my life when I was 200% focused on work.
Sure.
But this is not the case now. I live a life on many dimensions, and yes, and I enjoy it.
Brilliant. Great. Well, yeah, just once again, thank you, I guess, on behalf of all of those astrologers that you've helped over the years, just to get started in astrology and to continue their astrological
I think
studies.
we have to stop. It has become much longer than 10 minutes.
Yeah,
and
sorry.
I think the opening ceremony is starting.
Yeah, my apologies for taking too long, but thanks for joining me today, and I hope you have a good time at the conference.
Thank you for inviting me to be here.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Okay.